I never expected to find myself in such a vulnerable situation with my roommate. But sometimes life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Let me tell you about the time I was at my absolute worst, physically speaking, and how my straight roommate showed me a kind of compassion that challenged my assumptions about male friendships and caregiving. This story isn't just about being sick or sleeping arrangements. It's about those unexpected moments of humanity that remind us how connections can transcend the boundaries we often place around relationships. I should probably start by introducing myself and my roommate, Jake. We'd been living together for about 8 months in a modest 2-bedroom apartment near downtown. Our friendship had developed organically, the kind where you start as strangers brought together by Craigslist and rental applications, then gradually become actual friends who choose to hang out even when you don't have to. Jake was your typical straight guy in many ways. Sports on Sundays, protein shakes in the blender at ungodly hours of the morning, and the occasional parade of dates that would sometimes linger into breakfast. I, on the other hand, was more of the creative type, working remotely as a graphic designer, collecting vinyl records, and navigating the dating app scene with varying degrees of success. Our apartment wasn't anything special, just your standard 2-bedroom with a shared bathroom and a living area that doubled as our dining room when we bothered to eat at a proper table. Jake's room had the better mattress, though. He'd invested in one of those fancy memory foam situations while I was still sleeping on what was essentially a glorified futon masquerading as a real bed. This detail becomes important later, trust me. It was mid-January when the illness struck. You know how sometimes you can feel yourself getting sick? That scratchy feeling in your throat, the slight headache that won't go away no matter how much water you drink. Well, this wasn't like that at all. This hit me like a freight train in the middle of the night. I woke up at 3 a.m. with chills so intense my teeth were chattering, a fever that had me simultaneously freezing and sweating through my sheets, and the kind of body aches that made me wonder if I'd been hit by a car and somehow forgotten about it. Let me tell you, there's nothing quite like being violently ill in a shared living space to make you feel incredibly self-conscious. I tried to keep quiet as I stumbled to the bathroom, but when you're shivering so hard you can barely stand, stealth isn't exactly your strong suit. I remember leaning against the bathroom wall, trying to decide if I should just sleep in the tub rather than make the journey back to my room. When Jake appeared in the doorway, his hair sticking up in about 17 different directions. "Dude," he said, squinting at me through sleep-heavy eyes, "you look like absolute trash." I attempted a laugh that came out more like a wheeze. "Thanks for the vote of confidence. I think I'm dying." Jake's brow furrowed as he stepped closer, placing the back of his hand against my forehead in that universal gesture of temperature-taking that somehow transcends all backgrounds. "Holy shit, you're burning up. Have you taken anything?" I shook my head, which was a mistake because the movement sent a fresh wave of nausea through me. "Don't think we have anything," I managed to mumble. What happened next surprised me. Instead of just offering sympathetic words and retreating back to his room, which would have been a perfectly reasonable response at 3 a.m., Jake went into action mode. He helped me back to my room, rummaged through our medicine cabinet, and even went down to the 24-hour convenience store on the corner to get fever reducers, sports drinks, and crackers, all while wearing mismatched shoes and his pajama pants, I might add. By morning, my condition hadn't improved much. In fact, I'd argue it had gotten worse. The fever was still raging, and now I had developed a cough that felt like my lungs were trying to escape through my throat. Jake had to leave for work. He couldn't exactly call in sick because I was, but he set up an elaborate system of supplies within my reach. Tissues, water, medication, my phone charger, and even the TV remote, though I couldn't imagine having the energy to focus on anything more complex than staring at the ceiling. When he returned that evening, I was exactly where he'd left me, except possibly more pathetic looking. He took one look at me, at my sweat-soaked sheets and the general misery emanating from my person, and made the offer that would become the centerpiece of this story. "Take my bed," he said simply, as if he were offering me the last slice of pizza rather than his personal sleeping space. I blinked at him, wondering if the fever had progressed to hallucinations. "What? My bed," he repeated. "You should sleep there tonight. The mattress is better, and you need actual rest to get better. Plus, your sheets look like you went swimming in them." I started to protest, because that's what you do when someone offers you something genuinely kind, right? You refuse at least once. I can't take your bed, man. Where would you sleep? Jake shrugged. I'll take yours. Now, let me pause here to explain why this offer was so significant. In my experience, straight men typically have fairly rigid boundaries around personal space and possessions, particularly something as intimate as a bed. There's often this unspoken code about maintaining certain distances, especially between straight and gay men. Not that Jake and I had ever had any issues. He'd been nothing but respectful and normal since day one. But still, offering your bed to someone else, particularly when you know they've been sweating and coughing and generally being disgusting for the past 24 hours. That's next-level generosity. I can't let you do that, I insisted, trying to sound firm despite feeling weaker than a kitten. You'll get sick too. Jake rolled his eyes. If I was going to catch whatever plague you've got, it probably happened when I was holding your forehead while you threw up last night. Besides, I've got an immune system of steel. He flexed dramatically, which made me laugh, which then made me cough, which then made me groan in pain. See, he said, this is non-negotiable. Can you walk, or do I need to carry you? The mental image of Jake attempting to carry my fever-ridden body across our apartment was both hilarious and mortifying enough to get me moving. With his support, I shuffled the short distance to his room, feeling like an elderly person making a treacherous journey across an icy parking lot. Jake's room was noticeably tidier than mine, another stereotype challenged, and his bed looked like something out of a hotel commercial compared to my rumpled disaster zone. The sheets were clean, the pillows plump, and the mattress. Oh, the mattress. The moment I sank into it, I understood why he had spent what seemed like an outrageous amount of money on it. It was like being cradled by a cloud. This is amazing, I mumbled, already half asleep. I might never leave. Jake laughed. Yeah, well, don't get too comfortable. Once you're better, I want it back. I drifted off to the sound of him moving around the apartment, gathering what I assumed were his things for the night. In my fever-addled state, I felt a wave of gratitude so intense it almost brought tears to my eyes. Or maybe that was just the fever. Either way, I slept better that night than I had since falling ill, despite still feeling like death warmed over. I woke up sometime in the middle of the night, disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings until I remembered the bed swap. The digital clock on Jake's nightstand read 2:17 a.m. My throat felt like I'd swallowed glass, and I needed water desperately. As quietly as possible, I eased myself out of the bed and made my way to the door. That's when I noticed something unexpected. Jake wasn't in my bed. He was on the floor of his own room, sleeping on what looked like a hastily assembled nest of blankets and a spare pillow. I stood there for a moment, confused. Had he found my bed too disgusting to sleep in after all? I wouldn't have blamed him, honestly. I must have made some noise because Jake stirred, lifting his head to look at me. You okay? He asked, voice thick with sleep. Why are you on the floor? I asked, ignoring his question. He sat up, rubbing his face. Have you seen your bed? It's like sleeping on a cardboard box. How do you live like that? I felt a strange mix of embarrassment and amusement. So instead of sleeping on my admittedly subpar mattress, you decided the floor was a better option? Jake shrugged. The floor doesn't pretend to be a mattress. It's honest about its hardness. I couldn't help but laugh, which naturally triggered another coughing fit. Jake was on his feet immediately, guiding me back to the bed. What do you need? Water. I nodded, and he disappeared, returning moments later with a glass and more medicine. As I swallowed the pills, I watched him settle back onto his makeshift floor bed. You know, I said, this is above and beyond normal roommate duties. Jake pulled a blanket up to his chin. Yeah, well, don't go writing sonnets about it or anything. I do the same for anyone. And that was the thing about Jake. I believed him. It wasn't that I was special. It was that he was genuinely a good person who helped people when they needed it. There was something profoundly comforting about that realization. The next morning, I woke up feeling marginally better, still sick, but like I might actually survive the experience. Jake was already up, the blankets from his floor bed neatly folded in the corner. I could hear him moving around in the kitchen, and soon he appeared with toast and tea. You don't have to wait on me, I said, even as I gratefully accepted the food. I'm feeling a bit better. Jake leaned against the doorframe. Good, because I can't call in sick again today. I nearly choked on my toast. You called in sick yesterday? Why didn't you tell me? He shrugged. You were pretty out of it. Besides, someone needed to make sure you didn't die or something. That would be a whole thing with the landlord. His casual deflection of what was actually a significant sacrifice made me both laugh and feel a twinge of guilt. "I'm sorry you had to waste a sick day on me." Jake waved dismissively. "Not a waste. I got to catch up on my Netflix queue and make sure my roommate didn't become a tragic news story. Local man found dead after refusing help because he's stubborn." Would have been embarrassing for both of us. That day passed in a blur of naps, more medicine, and Jake periodically checking on me when he returned from work. By evening, I was able to sit up and even managed to relocate to the couch for a change of scenery. Jake ordered soup from the Vietnamese place down the street, the spiciest option for himself and the mildest for me, and we ate while watching a mindless action movie. When bedtime approached, I insisted on returning to my own room. "I'm feeling better, really. You should have your bed back." Jake looked skeptical. "You sure? You still look pretty rough." "Flattery will get you everywhere," I deadpanned. "But yes, I'm sure. I've imposed enough." Jake helped me change my sheets, another act of kindness that seemed to come naturally to him, and made sure I had water and medicine within reach before retreating to his own room. As I settled into my significantly less comfortable bed, I found myself reflecting on the past couple of days. There's something uniquely vulnerable about being sick around other people. You're at your worst, physically, emotionally, often hygienically. There's no pretense possible when you're shivering with fever or making undignified sounds in the bathroom. It strips away the carefully constructed image we present to the world and leaves only our most basic, needy selves. And in that vulnerability, you learn a lot about the people around you. Some people can't handle it. They'll keep their distance, make excuses, send a sympathetic text rather than risk exposure. Others, like Jake, step up in ways you'd never expect, crossing boundaries that seemed fixed and immovable. The next morning, I woke up feeling significantly better. The fever had broken, and while I still had the cough and general weakness, I no longer felt like I was on death's door. I made my way to the kitchen to find Jake already there, making coffee. "You look less like a corpse today," he observed, handing me a mug. "Congratulations on rejoining the living." I accepted the coffee gratefully. "Thanks to my nurse. You've missed your calling in healthcare." Jake snorted. "Yeah, right. I just didn't want to deal with finding a new roommate if you died. The application process is a nightmare." This had become our pattern, his genuine care disguised as practical self-interest, my gratitude wrapped in sarcasm. It was comfortable, this dance around sincere emotion. Over the next few days, as I continued to recover, I noticed subtle changes in our dynamic. There was an ease between us that hadn't been there before. We'd crossed some invisible line during my illness, moving from friendly roommates to actual friends who had seen each other at less than our best and stuck around anyway. One evening, about a week after the plague, as we'd taken to calling it, we were having beers on the couch when I decided to address what had been on my mind. "I never properly thanked you," I said during a commercial break, "for taking care of me when I was sick. It meant a lot." Jake looked almost embarrassed. "It wasn't a big deal. It was, though," I insisted. "Not everyone would have done what you did. Especially the bed thing. That was above and beyond." Jake took a long sip of his beer before responding. "My mom always said you can tell a lot about someone by how they treat people who need help. My dad was sick for a long time before he died, and I remember how some people just disappeared from our lives, while others showed up in ways we never expected." He shrugged, clearly uncomfortable with the sudden depth of the conversation. "Besides, that floor wasn't as bad as I made it out to be." I laughed. "Liar. I've sat on that floor. It's basically concrete with carpet." Jake grinned. "Okay, it was pretty bad, but still better than your mattress. Seriously, how do you sleep on that thing?" And just like that, we were back to our comfortable banter, the moment of vulnerability safely behind us. But something had shifted, some understanding had been reached without needing to be explicitly stated. In the months that followed, our friendship continued to deepen. We became each other's default +1s for events, confidants during dating disasters, and reliable allies in the everyday battles of adult life. And while we never directly referenced the plague or the bed-swapping incident again, it remained a touchstone in our relationship, a reminder that sometimes the most meaningful connections come from the most unexpected circumstances. Looking back now, I realized that what made Jake's actions so significant wasn't just the practical help he provided, though that was certainly appreciated. It was the way he dismantled assumptions, both his and mine, about how men are supposed to care for each other, about the boundaries between straight and gay friendships, about vulnerability and strength. In offering his bed and taking the floor, at first, he showed a kind of compassion that transcended labels and expectations. And isn't that what we're all looking for, in the end? People who see us at our worst, feverish, messy, needy, and still choose to stay, to help, to offer whatever comfort they can. I think about this often when I hear stories about divisions between different groups, about the walls we build between ourselves and others. Sometimes it takes being brought low by something as mundane as a bad flu to remind us of our common humanity, of the simple power of kindness offered without agenda or expectation. As for Jake and me, we're still roommates, and he still complains about my mattress whenever the topic arises. I've promised to upgrade eventually, though we both know it's more of a running joke than an actual commitment at this point. Some things change after experiences like ours, but some things, like his terrible puns and my reluctance to spend money on furniture, remain comfortingly the same. And if either of us gets sick, well, let's just say we've established a protocol that involves a lot less hesitation and a lot more immediate action. Because that's what you do when you've seen someone at their worst and realize that it doesn't change how you see them at all. You just help, because you can, because they would do the same for you. Because that's what transforms houses into homes and roommates into the family we choose for ourselves. Total_char_count. 18,422.